Shalom. Today I want to share something powerful with you, something many Jewish families have quietly held close in their homes for thousands of years. This is not a loud public ritual. It is not something people usually explain in detail. It is an old practice built around a sacred Hebrew psalm, a prayer filled with trust, provision, and peace, and for generations people have turned to it in times of financial pressure. Not casually, not half awake, not as empty words. They used it in a very intentional way, at a very specific time, with a very clear purpose in the heart. And today I want to walk you through that practice step by step, because maybe you were meant to hear this right now. Let me ask you something real. Have you ever gone through a season where no matter how hard you tried, the money just would not stay? You worked, you pushed, you planned, you cut back, you did the smart thing. Still, by the end of the month it felt like everything slipped through your hands. Bills swallowed it. Emergencies showed up. One expense after another kept rising like waves. If that has been your story, stay with me, because what I am about to share is simple, ancient, and deeply moving, and it may speak to exactly what you have been carrying. Maybe you have asked God why this keeps happening. Maybe you have sat in silence and wondered why life feels like a race you can never quite catch up to. Why does it seem that the more effort you give, the less progress you see? If that sounds familiar, hear this clearly. You are not a failure, you are not lazy, you are not forgotten, and you are not being punished. In Jewish teaching there is a sacred idea called parnasa, which means livelihood, provision, the flow of what a person needs in order to live. The tradition says something striking. A person's provision is set aside from heaven for the year. In other words, the supply is not missing. The blessing is not absent. The problem is not always that nothing has been prepared. Sometimes the deeper issue is that what has already been prepared is not reaching you. Think of water in a full pipe. The source is strong, the water is there. But if something blocks the channel, only a small trickle comes through. That is how many people experience financial struggle. The blessing may exist, yet the path feels tight, closed, interrupted. And for generations, Jewish families believed there was a way to pray through that blockage, not with magic, not with a performance, but with sacred words spoken with faith and intention. Keep listening, because this changes the way most people hear Psalm 23. There was a woman in my community, a widow with children, and month after month she kept falling short no matter how hard she worked. She cleaned houses during the day, handled books for a small business at night, and still the pressure never eased. One day she told me, "It feels like my money disappears the moment it enters my hand." She was not wasting it. She was not living in luxury. She was simply overwhelmed. One evening she visited an elderly woman from the synagogue, someone who had survived years of hardship and yet somehow always seemed to have enough. Not rich in the world's eyes, but never empty, never bitter, always able to give a little to someone else. The widow asked her what her secret was. The older woman smiled and said that every morning before sunrise she stood in her home and read Psalm 23 aloud. But she did not read it like a poem. She did not read it like a funeral passage. She read it like a declaration. She spoke it as if the words were alive in that room, as if heaven could hear every sentence, as if she was not only reminding herself of God's promise, but opening her heart to receive it. And that is the part many people miss. Familiar words often become weak in our ears. We hear them so often that we stop hearing them at all. But stay with me, because inside that psalm is a force most people rush right past. Everyone knows the opening line, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." But when those words are heard through the depth of Hebrew understanding, they sound far stronger than people imagine. This is not soft decoration. This is not gentle background comfort. It is a bold statement of trust. It is a claim, a spiritual declaration. The meaning is not only that God comforts me, it means that when God truly leads me, lack does not get the final word. Deficiency does not own my future. Poverty does not have permanent authority over my life. That is how this line has been heard in a deeper spiritual sense by many who cling to it in hard seasons. And here is the practice that was passed down. You do not only think these words, you speak them aloud in your home before the sun rises. Why that hour? Because the final stretch of night, just before dawn, has long been seen as a time of openness, a quiet window when the soul is more awake to God and the heart is less distracted by noise. So she began the next morning. She stood in her small kitchen before sunrise and read Psalm 23 out loud, not shouting, not murmuring, but speaking with meaning. She later said that even on the first day something shifted inside her. A heaviness began to lift, and within days an old client called back unexpectedly with better pay than before. Was it magic? No. Jewish teaching does not frame this as magic. It frames it as alignment. When sacred words meet real faith, a blocked place can begin to open. Now listen closely, because there is one verse in this psalm that many people overlook, and yet it carries a deep message for anyone fighting financial pressure. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Most people hear that and think only of protection from difficult people. But there is more happening there. In older teachings, the enemies are not only people. They can also represent opposition, accusation, fear, shame, doubt, and every force that stands against your peace and provision. What matters is this. The verse does not say the table appears after the enemies leave. It says the table is prepared in their presence. That means blessing does not always wait for your whole life to become calm. Provision does not require every problem to vanish first. God can still set a table for you while pressure is still present, while bills remain, while the bank account feels thin, while anxiety whispers at midnight. The table can still be set. That is a powerful image. So when you reach that verse, pause, close your eyes, picture a table in your own home, see it clearly, not empty, not broken, covered with provision, covered with open doors, needed resources, help arriving from places you did not expect, ideas you had not considered, opportunities you could not have planned. And then speak this truth aloud in simple faith. This table has been prepared for me, and no opposing force has the final say over what God chooses to place before me. Don't click away now, because the next part is where the practice becomes complete. There is one more key, and without it the whole pattern stays unfinished. This final part is often the hardest for people, because it asks for action, not only words. In older Jewish teaching, blessing is often compared to a flow, a river, a stream, and a river must move. If water has nowhere to go, it stops moving well, it backs up, it becomes still. But when there is an open path, it flows stronger. In the same way, one of the oldest spiritual principles tied to provision is giving. In Hebrew this is called tzedakah. Many people translate that as charity, but the word carries a deeper idea of righteousness and right order. It is not just about being nice. It is about restoring flow. It is about refusing to close your hand completely, even in a season where you feel fear. That sounds difficult, and it is. But that is why it matters. The heart opens before the hand does, and once the hand opens, something changes in the soul. The old teachings tell stories of people who gave, even when their own resources were thin, and through that act they created room for blessing to move again. Not because giving is a trick to force heaven, but because giving breaks the panic of scarcity and places trust back where it belongs. This is why the image of the overflowing cup matters. An overflowing cup is not barely enough. It is more than enough. It spills over, and overflow is never only for the self. It is meant to bless others too. If this is speaking to you, stay with me, because now I want to lay out the full practice in a simple way. The night before, set aside a small amount of money. It does not have to be large. The size is not the point. The point is intention. Place it in an envelope or a small box and decide in your heart that it will be given away as tzedakah. When you do that, say out loud, in simple words, that you are opening space for provision to flow. That is step one. Then, before sunrise the next morning, rise and stand somewhere in your home. Your kitchen is fine. Your living room is fine. A quiet corner is fine. Open Psalm 23 and read it slowly out loud from beginning to end. Not rushed, not mechanical. Let each line land. When you reach the first verse, pause and say in your own strong, simple English that lack has no rightful place in your home, that God is your shepherd, and that you will not live under the rule of fear. Then continue. When you come to the verse about the table prepared before you, stop again. Close your eyes and see that table in your mind. See it filled with what is needed. Then say aloud that what God prepares for you cannot be stolen by fear, blocked by doubt, or erased by difficulty. Keep going. And when you reach the line, "My cup runs over," place your hand on the envelope you prepared the night before, and say that as you pour out for others, you trust God to keep pouring into your life. Simple words, strong heart. That is how this practice begins to breathe. Then you come to the final verse. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Do not rush past that line. Speak it slowly. Let it settle inside you. Because in that moment you are not only finishing a psalm, you are choosing an atmosphere for your life. You are refusing to let your story be told only by numbers, debts, headlines, market fear, or your latest bad week. You are saying that there is a covenant deeper than the economy, older than recession, stronger than panic, and more stable than every system built by human hands. That does not mean wisdom, work, and planning stop mattering. They still matter. Very much. But this practice reminds the soul that God remains the true source. And when a person remembers the source, fear begins to lose its grip. Now bring the whole thing together. There are 3 threads here, and each one matters. The first is declaration. You speak the words aloud because spoken words shape the heart and establish spiritual focus. The second is vision. You picture the table, because what fills your inner world begins to influence how you stand, pray, act, and hope. The third is action. You give, you open your hand, you refuse to let fear seal the channel shut. Declaration, vision, action. These 3 move together. This is why the practice has endured across generations, across hardship, across exile, across poverty, across rebuilding. It is simple enough for anyone to do, yet deep enough to carry a person through very dark seasons. I have seen people do this and receive an unexpected call the same day. I have seen people who were choking under pressure suddenly find new work, new clients, new ideas, or timely help arriving from a place they never expected. I have seen burdens lift. I have seen doors open quietly, not always with fireworks, sometimes very softly, but real. And I want to be clear, because this matters. This is not a promise that money will drop from the sky. That is not the point, and it is not how faith works. The point is that when words, faith, imagination, and generosity begin to move in the same direction, something blocked can begin to break. Something frozen can begin to move. A person who has been standing under heaviness begins to breathe again. Their thinking clears, their fear loosens, their spirit straightens. And often when that shift happens, new paths become visible. That is part of the gift too. So if you have been feeling squeezed from every side, I want to challenge you gently but clearly. Try this practice. Tonight prepare your envelope. Tomorrow before sunrise, stand in your home and read Psalm 23 out loud. Speak the lines with purpose. See the table, touch the envelope at the overflowing cup, finish with conviction, and then carry that spirit into your day. Because sometimes one ancient act of faith can interrupt months, even years of inner heaviness. And once the inside changes, the outside often begins to move as well. Let me slow this down for a moment and make it practical, because sometimes the heart is willing, but the mind still asks, what exactly am I doing? You are not performing a trick. You are not buying a blessing. You are not trying to manipulate heaven. You are stepping into a rhythm of trust that joins prayer, focus, and generosity that matters. The spoken psalm centers your spirit. The image of the table lifts your thinking out of survival mode and into expectancy. The act of giving breaks the tight fist that fear wants to create. When all 3 come together, your whole posture changes. You stop standing in life as if lack is your master. You begin standing as someone who believes provision has a source beyond panic. That alone can begin to transform the way you move through a difficult season. And yes, keep your common sense. Keep working. Keep budgeting. Keep applying. Keep building. Keep learning. Faith is not an excuse to drift. But faith can become the fire inside disciplined action. It can give courage where despair had been winning. It can bring peace where pressure had filled every room. It can stop the soul from collapsing under the same story day after day. So if you are hearing this while under stress, do not dismiss the simplicity of it. Many powerful things in spiritual life are simple, quiet, repeated, honest, no spotlight, no performance, just a person, a psalm, a room before sunrise, and the decision to trust again. Sometimes that is where the turning begins. And if this is hitting home, keep going with me, because the final part is the blessing I want to leave with you. So tonight, when the house grows quiet, prepare that small gift. Tomorrow, before the sun comes up, stand on your feet and speak Psalm 23 over your home, not with drama, with faith. When you say, "The Lord is my shepherd," let your heart say, "I am not abandoned." When you say, "I shall not want," let your spirit answer, lack will not define me. When you reach the table, see it in front of you. When you reach the overflowing cup, touch what you have set aside, and remember that an open hand invites flow. When you reach goodness and mercy, receive them as companions for the road ahead. And after that, walk into your day with your shoulders a little straighter and your mind a little clearer. Watch closely. Stay awake to small openings. Stay grateful for little shifts. Stay ready for unexpected provision, because sometimes it starts quietly. A call, a message, an idea, a favor, a connection, a chance you almost ignored. This is how many answers arrive. Not always loud, but right on time. And if someone you love is carrying financial pain, pass this message to them. Sometimes a single piece of ancient wisdom reaches a person at the exact moment they are about to give up, and that timing changes everything. May your home be filled with peace. May your table hold enough and more than enough. May your heart know that you are seen, guided, and provided for. Trust the ancient wisdom. Speak the sacred words. Open the channel, and step forward into the provision that may have been waiting for you all along. Shalom.